Hi, welcome to Flight Test. I'm Josh, and today we're going to be doing the build video of the FT Old Fogey. Now, if you guys haven't seen the review of the FT Old Fogey, you can find it on the link below. But basically what this is we captured a lot of the lines of classic old-timers. Mainly, when I designed this, I copied my dad's favorite plane, which is the Buzzard Bombshell, and just changed a couple things to kind of make it synonymous with all the old-timers from the past, just to give it a classic slow-fly feel. So, if you guys want to build this, go ahead and download your plans. If you haven't already, build your pod. You'll find the link down below for that, or up on my left-hand corner if Dave not chooses to put it there. We'll see. And get your materials, get your plans cut out, and we'll get started. Alright, our first step is to actually build the wings. We're going to do the wings first because once we're done with the wings, we can move on to the fuselage and stay with it all the way up through completion. So for the wings, you're going to need your center panel, your two wing tips, and also these two little triangles here, which are going to give you the proper amount of undercamber when you assemble your wings. So get that in order and we'll get started. Now just to point out, when you guys cut this out, it's very, very slight and it's hard to see, but this outer wing panel actually has a slight curve into it. It's two straight lines, but when you can see, this is just a basic rectangle, and then this has the actual notch in there. You're going to want to make sure that both your wing panels have the exact same amount of notch. Otherwise, one wing, when it's put together, is going to have a higher amount of dihedral on it than the other. Now for the wings, if you haven't already done a 50% score cut, you're going to want to do that where the red line is on the plans, and that is right about here. Just for you guys, if you've never built a swappable before, red lines mean 50% score cut. A dotted red line means a 50% score cut on the opposite side of the foam. So just keep that in mind. Once you get this, we're going to treat this just like we're doing a hinge. We're going to crack it in half and take it to the edge of our table. Now, instead of using a razor blade, I only need to put a slight bevel. I'm going to use 50 grit sandpaper just to go back and forth a couple times. Do it a couple times, then go back and test out your angle to see if it works. And this is where these little gauges come to play. We're going to go ahead and slide these in right to the leading edge. And you don't want this to have to pull up too hard. It should sit there nice, and you should have just enough tension to keep these little guys from rocking back and forth. If it's super tight, that means you need to do a little bit more sanding. But that feels really good. Once you're happy with the fit, it's not too tight, it's going to hold that angle on its own. Open up your cap, put some glue in, and leave it just a generous enough amount where it squeezes out a little bit. We want to use a little scrap piece of foam as a squeegee to seal that top. So we're going to move that around. Once again, take our back half on the building board, get our little gauges in here. Always keep constant pressure on the back part of that wing. And then we'll take our little squeegee and squeegee right over the gap. We've now done both of our wing tips. The next step is to do the center section. Now keep in mind, when you sand this, always sand the same side, which is going to be this leading edge area of the wing. If you go ahead and sand the back part of the wing, things may not line up as perfectly. So we're always going to consistently sand the same side. But to be truthful, it's kind of hard to sand the opposite side because it wants to sit up at an odd angle. So we'll go ahead and do the same process as the wing tips. And this is where having two of these comes in handy, because you don't want to just put one in the middle and have the dihedral be off. It's more important to have it be exact on the wingtips than the center, because that's where your wings are going to match up. Alright, I'm happy with that fit. Go ahead and put some glue in it. Once again, put just enough to squeeze out that little bit amount of glue that's squeegeed over top of that gap. Makes a lot of strength. And we'll hold this here until it dries. By now we should have all three of our wing pieces established with the proper amount of undercamber on them. The next step is to put the wing tips on and establish our polyhedral. Now polyhedral is where the wing actually has two breaks of dihedral in it. First thing we want to do though is make sure that our wings actually line up properly. Now if you use those gauges and everything worked good, you should have a really nice clean joint right there. And that's where the joint's going to really matter. If this is loose and it doesn't quite meet up easily for you, make some adjustments, but make them even to both sides of the wing. As long as you have the same amount of polyhedral, you're okay. I'm happy with the fit. I'm going to lay down a nice healthy bead of glue. And I like to put the outer wing tips first, the leading edge and trailing edge, and then rock it in, and then just hold it in place. Do not rush this part. If you rush it, you may move something off and be in trouble. Now that the glue is thoroughly dry, we can go ahead and lay this flat on our building board. And just like when we're putting the undercamber into the wing, we want to go ahead and put a small bead of glue right on these top surface here, and then use a scrap piece of foam to squeegee it into the groove. Go ahead, and once you have the squeegee, go ahead and let it dry, and we're ready to do the other wingtip. And if you guys are really concerned, it's mainly important that you just have these both be the same. So the best thing to do is, if you have a friend from Sweden, have them come in while you're holding this wingtip, measure this one right here, find the measurement, And while the glue's drying, you can come over here, give you that measurement, and you do have a little bit of wiggle room where you can bend this up and down just slightly. How is it from Sweden? Right there? Hold it there?
Perfect.
Perfect. All right. Hold it until it dries, and then we're ready to repeat the next step, which is squeegeeing the glue into the crack, and you're done with the wing. For the fuselage, you're basically going to need your elevator, your rudder, and your main fuselage piece. Now, if you guys have been following the build series, you'll see this is very common and similar to the baby blender and the foul flyer. Now, we're going to incorporate the techniques we use from the foul flyer, which is a B-style fold for this. B-style being where the side of the airframe goes next to the bottom plate of the fuselage. If you have any more questions about that, on the plans will be diagrams of what an A-fold and a B-fold are. So just keep in mind when I say B-fold what it is and when I say A-fold what it is. The A-fold will be your power pod, the B-fold will be the side of this fuselage here, and basically this whole airplane is nothing but B-folds after you build your power pod. First thing we're going to do though is we're going to put the fuselage to the side. We're going to go ahead and cut our bevels into our elevator, into our rudder, and get those ready to go so we don't have to come back to it later. Now, if you guys are concerned about the paper actually fatiguing and eventually tearing off of the foam, it seldom happens, but over time it may possibly occur. Now, our friend Chad Capper has a solution for this. What he simply does is he takes this to a flat surface, as you can see right there, then takes his hot glue gun and puts a very thin bead right down the center. Now, you don't want to go too excessive and you don't want to leave any globs because it will cause binding if you don't do this right. Take another little scrap of foam and then squeegee it nice and hard and push it down to that surface. Go over it a couple times too to make sure that you just really work it in there. You don't want any excess. You just simply want that glue to soak into the foam pores and firmly adhere to the paper and the foam together. Let it dry just like this. Don't fold it down, and we'll move on to the rudder. You're going to fold it back, edge of the board. Make sure you cutting out the rudder, not the fin. This is totally something you can do if you want to do it. You don't need to do it, but I know one thing. Chad's hinges don't come apart. We're now ready to move on to the fuselage. Now, I know with these folded together fuselages, they seem intimidating because all the pieces that are combined together, but it's actually very simple. As long as when you cut this out, you ignore things on your initial cuts like these notches here, here, and down here. If you just do all your basic outside cuts first, you can always come back later and then cut the inside notches easy as can be. If you try to go and stop here and then cut here, you will oftentimes get ragged, jagged edges, and of course using a very sharp razor blade is always beneficial. But take your time, do the big cuts first, work down to the small cuts, and it'll go along very well. As you can see, we have two areas just like the power pod that we need to remove the foam, so we're going to go ahead and do that now, and we might as well just do it on all the airframe. Now that we have that done, just like in our baby blender episodes, our foul flyer episodes, and probably most future episodes, we want to bevel this back. I like this folding along with a common line. So what I'm going to do is you can use a popsicle stick, even in your thumbnail, just put a slight indent in the paper. After we're done with that, we're ready to go ahead and do two B-style folds right here, one side at a time. You don't want to try to put glue down everywhere and hold everything nice and square. Now we want to put down just enough glue to actually spill out just a touch, so it force when we fold this together, it's going to force up over, and then we can use a scrap piece and squeegee that on right there. You notice I'm stopping a ½ inch from the beginning and the end so it doesn't pour out and glue into our building boards. I'm going to hold this firmly down and then push against the building table because this is a B-style joint, and then now I can go over and simply use my triangle to hold this all together. Now it seems like a juggling match, but you can even take a scrap piece of foam now, squeegee it, and then go back to holding it until it's thoroughly dry. Only do one side at a time and make sure that this side fuselage is firmly against your building board. If it's not, you're going to have issues when you get back to the tail section here with a twisted fuselage. But if you take your time, make sure that it's nice and square here, everything on the fuselage will come perfectly together, perfectly and square. Now the sides are done, we're going to go ahead and install the front of the fuselage. We're going to put a glue bead down here, go ahead and put a glue bead here, and then also just a little dab right here and here. You can always come back later and reinforce if you have to. Once again, B-style fold. And you can see this is where it really pulls the fuselage into square. You can see in areas like this where we can't push against the building board, it's kind of nice to run your finger down, squeegee that extra little bit of glue out there. Now if this is an issue here where it's not fastened, you can always put a bead of glue down. Once again, grabbing a little squeegee from your extra foam, run it down there and let it dry. Once these are dry, we can go ahead and just put a really tiny little bead here just to seal this off. Now keep in mind, it's a good idea to always squeegee away excess glue. Not only does it drive it into the groove and make a stronger joint, but also the more excess glue you can remove, the lighter your airframe is going to be. And with this being a slow flying airplane, every time you save one of these, you save roughly 8 grams of weight. It's easy to waste one stick on an airplane, and you're actually adding about 8 grams of weight. 3 grams of weight is an ounce, and for an airplane that weighs about 10 ounces all up, that's a lot. Now the front of the fuselage is done, we're ready to go to the back. And for that, I'll just make it so you guys can easily see. I want to apply a bit of glue right on the surface right here, and then also on this top right here. And then just like the foul flyer, when we put this together, we're going to kind of come in and push it together and hold it down. Now keep in mind, this is where your stabilizer is going to be, so it's a really good idea to make sure it's nice and solid and as true and straight as possible. Now that the one side's done, we'll repeat the process on the other side. Once again, hold until it's thoroughly dry. Now that we're happy with our fuselage and our control surfaces, we're going to put them together. And to start with that, we're going to go ahead and put some glue on this top surface right here. We're going to slide the fin right into the fuselage, keeping that glued area up if at all possible. You don't want to smear glue all around. And then just gently slide it all the way forward, keeping the hinge line right at the back surface of the fuselage. Make sure when you do this that this part of the fin is firmly against the bottom of your fuselage right here. Now for the elevator, we're just going to simply put a little daub right here, and then we're going to go along the back end of the skid on the fuselage. Where they're going to take our elevator with the hinge line up, slide it over top of the skid, and once again make sure that our hinge line is at the very end of the fuselage, as right here. Once you're happy with the fit and everything's drying, you can also go back and go ahead and put a bead right along the edge and remove the excess. If you notice, I'm a lot more keen on removing excess because this is a plane that we want to keep as light as possible. It's a good practice on all your builds though to remove any excess glue if at all possible. Our next step, I'm going to flip the plane upside down, take one of our favorite barbecue skewers here, and you can see we can just put a little tiny skid here. I'm going to extend the skid a little bit beyond the elevator just to give it a little additional protection. Now I like skids in the back of old timers just because it's more primitive, but also with a long fuselage and a stubby nose, you don't want to put any weight back here if you can help it. But if you wanted to, you can always extend a rod going through, tying into your rudder, and put a little tail wheel back there. The next step, now that our fuselage is virtually complete, is to add the power pod to our swappable FT Old Fogey. And to do that, we're going to do just like the other process with the FT Flyer, the nut ball, virtually every swappable plane, we have to have 2 dowel rods through the leading edge. Now that our power pod is in, we want to fasten the rear, but also we want to put the servo tray in. For the servo tray, we're going to go ahead and take this piece that you guys cut out. Just like our fuselage, we're going to go ahead and crack it and remove that excess foam here. But in this case, we're going to actually do an A-style fold, which is where the sides are going to go over top of the bottom plate. It's always a good idea whenever you're doing an A or B-style fold to always have the portion that you're going to be pushing down against your building board. So in this case, it'll be just like this. Reason being is that way you're pushing this plate down. If you went this way, you could actually move this back and forth without knowing by pushing it down against it. But when you hold it this way, you can push these two together to make a nice solid right angle. Our next step is to install our servo tray. Now to do this, what we're going to want to do is take our power pod, move it to the farthest up, basically against this top plate right here. It's actually going to be a little bit farther beyond what you really need. Slide in your servo tray. Now as you can see, the servo tray keeps us from getting the wrong thrust angle left and right too. It keeps us center up in the back here. Slide your servo tray all the way against these back tabs, and once we're happy with that, we'll go ahead and just put a thin little line of glue on both sides. This should be a slight friction fit. Our next step is to take a piece of tape, carefully go inside the fuselage, tape the side cheeks down to your fuselage side. Now what this will also do is it'll enable your power pod when sliding in to not catch against the hard edges of the foam there, and it'll also finish securing your servo tray to your fuselage side. Next step is to take this little remainder of our barbecue skewer and take it through our reference holes, through the sides of the fuselage, and through the tape. And don't try to go through one side to the other, just like we talked about with all the previous builds. Do each side separately. That way you don't have to worry about being off. Once you have those holes made, slide your power pod in and test out the fit. Our next step is install the control horns. So we're going to go to our normal places where it's marked on the plans. Simple bead of glue. Once again with control horns, you always want to make sure that the holes of the control horn go right over top of the hinge line. Next step is to loosely install the servos. We're going to just go ahead and place these in loosely for now, in case we have to make any adjustments later. But these are 9-gram servos. You can get them from a multiple place. We use the Hextronic 9 grams all the time, also Turnigy 9 grams. The next step we're going to have to do is we're going to take this thin vinyl tubing. They oftentimes use it for antenna or guide tubes. In bigger models, you can get it very cheap. But if you can't find this, just simply use some straws. The whole goal is to keep this wire during that long travel from the servo to the control surface from bending and buckling. We're going to want this very end part to be as perpendicular to the linkage stopper. You don't want it to be in a sharp angle down or up, or it's going to put excess strain on your servo. So we're going to actually pull this up and then glue it following the contour of the fuselage down close to the fin where it can exit the fuselage to the control horn. Once we're done with this, you should be able with your hands to easily push this back and forth. If it's super tight, you have a kink in there, or you have to glue in your push rod tube, or you have an issue. Make sure if you can't smoothly move it back and forth by hand, that you go and address that problem ahead of time. The last thing you want is one of your control surfaces binding up while you're flying. We're going to repeat the same process as the on the elevator as the rudder. The only difference is we're going to take it through this little slot here to exit to our control horn. Now that we're happy with our fit, we're simply going to lift up on the servos, put a drop of glue under each flange, push down. I like to let it cool a little bit and then come back in and physically just kind of drag it over top of the servo hold. We basically haven't changed the plans on our baby blender landing gear at all. We've kept it virtually the same, and we'll have a 3-view drawing of it right here. But this is going to actually sit right on top of this right here, and we're going to wrap a rubber band. We have number 64s. You can use any style you want. Basically, you just want to go ahead and firmly fasten on the top and the bottom. Now, as you can see, the landing gear sweeps slightly forward. That's to make it incredibly difficult for this to tip over. Classic style with old-timer airplanes. Now, you can use heat treat tubing, but I really like to just go around it with simple hot glue. As you're traveling around, that hot glue ball is getting bigger and bigger. Let it cool for a second, and then we'll go back and we'll actually put a little twist by hand on it, which will cause it to constrict even more. And that's a perfect way to make a simple wheel collet. Our next step with connecting our linkages will be to center up our servos and to adjust the linkage stoppers down, and of course, put your servo screws in. For that, we hooked up our receiver. We're going to power it on. Obviously, you can see those are way off. Center up our servos. Now that our servo arms are 90 degrees from our control horns, we're going to want to make sure that our control surfaces are also in the neutral position. Once we're happy with the way that looks, we're going to tighten down our linkage stoppers. Now, before we put the wing on, the next step we're going to want to do is obviously to get our throws right. It's very important to get your throws right on this plane. You're not going to be flying like a 3D airplane. This is way too much throw for you. You're only going to want actually about a ½ inch to 3/4 of an inch at the most. If you fly with a 3-cell battery, the controls are going to be a lot more touchy because you're putting a lot more thrust past those control surfaces, so you may even dial it down more. But I like to start roughly with a ½ inch. You can move up or down from there, but it'll give you plenty of control to get out of dangerous situations. You don't have to have crazy deflection. It will actually get you in trouble in the long run with this one. So, we got our servos all centered up, we got our linkages down. Our next step is to put the wings on, but before we put the wings on, we need a dowel rod. So we're going to go ahead and put our barbecue skewers right through the holes like we always do. We're also going to measure the center line of the wing itself and put these popsicle sticks down just so the rubber band doesn't bite in and crease into this wing here. Alright, now that that's dry, we'll go ahead and set this on your wing, and if you did everything right, your wing should fit nice and flat on the bottom of your fuselage just like this. Last step is to simply install the wing by using some number 64 rubber bands. 2 is all we're going to need in this application. Always pay attention to your CG. Now, CG is going to virtually be right at the peak of where your fold on the wings were. Very easy to find, and as you can see, even with the little 500 milliamp 2-cell on here, it balances out really nicely. Now, the Blue Wonders, you're going to actually need to be a little bit careful here. Get that battery all the way up forward to get a proper balance point, because the Blue Wonder is a couple grams lighter than this Supo motor here. But needless to say, if you're going to go to a 3-cell or anything bigger, move it further back to get your balance right before you go ahead and fly. A tail-heavy airplane will not fly smoothly. This plane is designed to run off of a Blue Wonder or this amazing little motor here that I've really grown to love. It's a little Supo motor that Altitude Hobby sent us, along with their 18 amp speed control, and it works beautifully with this plane. It's a perfect amount of balance and also the perfect amount of thrust to fly the full line of Swappable series. Obviously, the Baby Blunder will have a little bit less power, but it can power all of them quite nicely. Now, we are flying this off of a little 2-cell 500 milliamp LiPo, our favorite little Hobby King one down here, and it's plenty of power to do everything you need that a basic old timer slow flyer would do. It also, for inside gyms and everything, will keep this slow enough and a light enough weight to fly very nicely and very controllably. Well friends, she's all ready to test fly, but first I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank Stonecap Productions for sponsoring this episode, and I want to encourage you, when you build this, post it on the forums, let us know your experiences. Also, any mods, you feel free to post it on flitetest.com. Remember to rate the articles, and let's get this thing in the air. Now it's really important with slow flyers like this to always make sure you throw them into the wind, because so much of it requires lift and not speed. It's important that you have everything working for you. All right, let's go ahead and test it out. If you properly trim up an old timer, you should be able to trim it to do nice big lazy circles without any input whatsoever. And you can see it's doing just that, nice big lazy circles. My dad used to actually trim out his buzzer bombshell where he could walk up to it and touch the wheel as it passed by. I used to be amazed at the stability of what they can do. But it's a moderately windy day, it's not totally dead calm, and this little guy handles beautifully. There we go, she flies great.